Hi, we're happy to have you joining us today for our virtual event on debunking EV myths. We will go ahead and get started. Virtual event. I am Megan Lochter. I'm an event manager here at PSE and help support the electric vehicle program. I'm also a Nissan Leaf owner, which I bought pre-owned based on participating in these virtual events. One of our owners convinced me to buy. So always love participating in these. And I will pass it off to Adam.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Adam Crawford. I'm the outreach manager for Kittitas County. I work closely with the electric vehicle program team. And then my wife and I purchased a 2017 Nissan Leaf in 2020. So we have a little bit of experience with electric vehicles. Pass it on to Michael.
Hi, my name is Michael Harthorn. I'm the marketing manager for our electric vehicle programs here at PSE, and I own an electric bike from Rad Power Bikes that I love deeply. And I'll send it over to our EV owner guest.
Hi, I'm Scott Manthe. I am a owner of a Nissan Leaf. We've had about 4 months now, and I've also rented numerous other electric vehicles as I travel a lot. So I have a great deal of experience with EV use.
Great. And this event is not sponsored by Nissan Leafs. We just all happen to be Nissan Leaf owners. Awesome. Adam, I will hand it over to you.
All right, we'll go to the next slide. So for everybody in attendance today, you've automatically been entered into winning one of 2 prizes. That consists of a $150 Fred Meyer gift card, plus other PSE goodies. And so for those random winners, you will be notified later today. So good luck to everybody that is joining us today. Next, we'll go on to our first poll. And so the question is, what do you think is the biggest myth of electric vehicles? So you'll see that poll pop up. Go ahead and choose what fits best. And I'm going to go ahead and pose this question to Megan. Megan, what do you think is the biggest myth of electric vehicles?
I think I would say limited range, because I have, like I said, a pre-owned Nissan Leaf, and it only has 80 miles on it now. Yep. It's a 2015. And we get around in that thing. It's a great for our everyday driving. And so I think there's a use for that in people's lives. And so I think that is one of the myths. And then I also know that there's a lot of vehicles now that have much higher ranges. So that one stands out to me.
Great. Yeah, thanks for your input. Okay, let's go ahead and close that poll. It looks like coming in at number 1 was the limited range. That was at 35%. And in second was just as bad for the environment at 23%. So thanks everybody for participating. We appreciate that. Now I'm going to hand it off to Michael and we will get into our program.
Hi, everybody. So we're here to talk electric vehicles. PSE wants to make it as easy as possible for our customers to switch to an electric vehicle. It's one way we can reduce our carbon emissions together and create a cleaner energy future. So before we jump into myths, let's just start with some EV basics for anyone who's brand new to EVs. And so we're kind of all on the same page about what we're talking about. First, an electric vehicle is any vehicle that you can plug into the wall, basically anything that you're going to extend a cord from a charging station into. There are 2 types. One is a battery-only electric vehicle. The other is a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. For the sake of this meeting, we'll really only be talking about battery electric EVs. They are far more popular. with consumers, over 80% of the EVs in Washington are battery only. And they also have more financial and environmental benefits than plug-in hybrids. That's not to say there's not a place for plug-in hybrids. They're an excellent stepping stone. But we'll be talking mostly about battery-only electric vehicles. And yes, electric trucks are finally here. People are excited about that. If you haven't checked in on what's available, there are over 100 EV models now available in Washington, which is pretty impressive. There's pretty much an EV to fit anyone's needs at this point. And finally, we'll just talk a little bit about charging. There's 3 types of charging we'll discuss. Level 1 charging is the cable that comes with pretty much every EV model. Is included with the car, and you can just plug that into any standard wall outlet. You only get about 2 to 5 miles of range per hour of charging, but if you don't drive too much, or you just want to plug it in overnight, I know that works. I know Megan and I believe Adam only use level 1 charging. I know plenty of people that just stick there. If you want a faster charger at home, you can upgrade to a level 2 charger. That will need to be installed by an electrician. You'll get about 25 miles of range per hour of charging. It's a lot faster. There's also convenience of being able to schedule your charging with that as well. You'll also see these level 2 chargers at public charging stations, as well as workplaces, apartment complexes, etc. The final type of charging is DC fast charging. These look like gas pumps. You'll find them at public charging stations pretty much exclusively. Some fleets will have them. And that will get you a full charge in under an hour, often much quicker with the new models coming out. And we'll discuss those a little more as we get into EV myths. So let's move on. All right, we're going to start with some affordability myths. These are some big ones for people looking to purchase an EV. To start with, EVs are too expensive. That's obviously relative to your situation, but overall, it's not true if you're in the market for a new vehicle. Consumer Reports found that EVs are up to $10,000 cheaper over the vehicle's lifetime, and that's due largely to savings on fuel and maintenance, those offsetting the higher upfront purchase price for EVs. EV prices are also coming down. There are 40 models available in Washington right now for under $50,000 with incentives. That's about the average price of a new car. So you can get plenty of EVs under the average price an American spends on a new car. There are also pre-owned EVs. That market is starting to heat up a little bit more as EVs get more popular. And electric bikes. I'm an electric bike owner. You can get excellent electric bike for around $1,000, and they are very cheap to charge. Let's see, anything else I want to talk about? This too expensive myth. Your gas bill or your electric bill will obviously go up when you're charging a vehicle at home, but the amount your electric bill increases will be easily offset by the savings on not going to the gas station. You can see that little graphic below there, saving a couple $1,000s a year just by switching to an electric vehicle. And maintenance, the maintenance savings mostly come from no oil changes, no spark plugs, no transmission to worry about. So you'll find hundreds of dollars of savings there throughout the year. Another source of savings are federal tax credits and the Washington state tax exemption. These incentives are still available. The federal tax credit got more expansive this last year with the passing of the Inflation Reduction Act, though it also got more complicated. You can save up to $7,500 on your income tax bill. There are restrictions based on where the car was manufactured, where the battery components come from, what your household income level is. However, those restrictions only apply if you pay for the car outright. If you are leasing the car, usually the dealership will waive those and just pass on the federal tax credit to you. You do want to check with that dealership first. The other thing to note is starting in January, this gets a little easier. If you were to try to take advantage of this incentive now, you'd have to file it on your tax forms. Now, in January, the dealership will do that for you, so it'll be a point of sale incentive for you. The Washington state tax exemption is also a point of sale incentive, so you'll get that right away. You can save up to $975 on a new electric vehicle and just over $1,000 on a pre-owned electric vehicle. Just want to mention also, PSE and myself are definitely not tax experts. So if you have any further questions about income or incentives, you might want to talk to a tax professional before taking advantage of those. The next myth I want to talk about is that you'll need to install an expensive home charger. I touched on this already. It's not true. You can make do with level 1 charging depending on your amount of driving. Most of the electric vehicle drivers I know actually just do this. They plug into their home wall, charge overnight, and have enough charge to get their commutes and errands done the next day. If you do want to upgrade to a level 2 charging station at home, you're going to spend around $1,500 for the charger and installation combined. I've heard from many customers that they end up spending less than that, though depending on your electric box and what kind of upgrades you need or where you're installing the charger at your home, it might be more expensive. We can also recommend some trusted installation experts that we've worked with. I believe there's a link going up in the chat. So if you're in the market for a level 2 charger and want to install one yourself, or have someone install it, we can recommend someone to do that for you. The other thing I want to note here is that we have a home charging incentive launching early next year. That'll be a rebate on level 2 chargers available through our PSE marketplace. Has not launched yet. If you want to learn more about that when it does launch, sign up for our Up and Go Electric newsletter. Another affordability myth, you'll spend thousands to replace the battery. It's true that EV batteries can be very expensive to replace. However, you're unlikely to need to pay to replace it. Most batteries are under warranty for up to 10 years, 150,000 miles, which the average American gets a new car every decade. So hopefully that's not the case. The other good news is that range losses have not been as dramatic as feared. Megan already also touched on this, but batteries are retaining their usefulness for much longer. They can retain 80% to 90% of their capacity even after hundreds of thousands of miles driven. And battery technology is improving, so hopefully that increases their lifespan and brings costs down in the future. Moving on to travel myths. This is where we'll talk about range and charging a little bit more. So EVs don't have enough range. This was the big myth people mentioned in the poll. One thing to note, only 11% of Americans report having a one-way commute of over 30 miles. The median EV range, meanwhile, has increased from 82 miles in 2013 to 277 miles in 2023. That's expected to continue to increase as battery technology improves. So that's plenty of range to cover most daily driving needs. And it's not just the expensive models that have that kind of range. As you can see there are around a dozen electric vehicles under $50,000 that have at least 250 miles of range across all different makes and models. So charging is inconvenient. The truth is most charging is done at home, which couldn't be more convenient. You can plug the vehicle in while you sleep. And wake up to a full charge in the morning to go about your day, stopping at gas stations. The number of public charging stations is increasing. Check out plugshare.com. It's my favorite tool for locating charging stations. You can see that map on the right. That's from PlugShare. You might be surprised at how many are out there. You can figure out, look at ratings, see which ones are in the best condition. You can see which ones are the fastest. Some are free if you know where to look, so you don't even have to pay sometimes. It's very helpful. Also note that you may want to just save public charging stations for road trips or in a pinch. Some studies have shown they can harm battery capacity over time. There's disagreement about just how much harm they do, but also for convenience and price sake, it's probably best to do your charging at home. Or if you have a charger at your workplace, use that while you work. Which brings me to our new Up and Go Electric for multifamily and workplace programs. Those have launched now. We'll put some links in the chat. If you want to bring EV charging to your apartment, condo, or workplace, let your property manager know, let your employer know. There are significant incentives available to do so. All right, another myth, and timely right now. EVs can't handle cold weather driving. That is not true. Well, it is true that freezing temperatures will reduce electric vehicle range, 25% less range on average in freezing temperatures. That reduction is mostly due to heating the cabin, and there are workarounds for that. And it also varies widely by model. As you can see there are a number of models that lose less than 10% of their stated range in freezing weather. Tesla's lost over 50% of their stated range, so those performed worse in various tests. If you're concerned about driving cold weather, if it's something you do frequently, you want to find a model that uses heat pump technology to heat the cabin. That drains the battery far less than a standard heater. Other cold weather tips to preserve battery: preheat your EV while it's still plugged in. Use the heated steering wheel and seats instead of the main heater when possible. All right, finally, we'll move on to a couple environmental myths about EVs. First, there's a myth that goes around frequently. We see it a lot here at Puget Sound Energy, that electric vehicles are actually worse for the environment than gas-powered cars. It's a lot more complicated than just looking at electric vehicles don't have, they don't make emissions while they drive. It's more complicated than that, but it is true that they are still better for the environment. Thanks to a relatively clean fuel mix in Washington, drivers can reduce their driving emissions significantly just by switching to an electric vehicle. And studies show that even when looking at the full life cycle of a vehicle, electric vehicles are better for the environment than gas-powered cars. Those studies take into account everything from mining of minerals for batteries to production of the cars to recycling the vehicles after they've completed their usefulness. So a recent study there showed that a Toyota Camry creates 68 tons of carbon emissions over its lifetime versus just 15 tons from a Tesla Model 3. And this is expected to improve as electricity continues to get greener and we make better use of sustainable sources. Another thing, this one is close to my heart. Cars aren't the only type of electric vehicles. There's also electric bicycles. An electric bike creates less than 1% of the CO2 produced by a Tesla Model 3 in its lifetime, and you already saw how much better that Model 3 was than a regular car. Electric bikes can replace many car trips. You can see the stats there. Many car trips are single occupancy. Many are less than 6 miles. Our rain makes it a little difficult, but with an electric vehicle, you can zip right up any of our area's hills with no trouble. I love mine, so I suggest if you're interested, check out electric bikes. There's some really cool stuff going on there. One other thing to mention about electric bikes is the state is preparing to offer pretty sizable rebates on electric bikes starting next year, so keep an eye out for those. Next, old EV batteries will pile up in landfills. Electric batteries are maintaining usefulness longer than previously thought, something I mentioned already. They're staying in vehicles and continuing to be useful for longer. The reuse and recycling of batteries is also growing. The Inflation Reduction Act provides incentives for automakers using recycled materials in their batteries. And batteries removed from EVs still have around 80% of their original storage capacity. They can be used for intermittent renewable energy generation, storage at electric vehicle charging sites. They've also been used to power convenience stores, sports stadiums. So these batteries still have lots of usefulness once they're removed. And the recycling of them should continue to increase as a lot of startups get going in that area. All right, this is my last myth, and then I will turn it over to Adam. The electric grid can't handle the influx of electric vehicles. Puget Sound Energy and other utilities are confident that that's not true. We still have time to prepare as people make the switch over to electric vehicles. And increasing grid resiliency is something that we can do together with our customers. Puget Sound Energy is currently working on grid modernization. And part of that is what we call a virtual power plant. That is basically a grouping of things. In our case, it's going to be smart thermostats, heat pump water heaters, electric vehicle chargers, and more. They can balance electricity loads while providing services to the grid like a power plant would. It improves the resiliency of the grid. We'll use it when the grid is stressed during times of extreme heat or extreme cold. So that's what we're currently working on as customers. When you charge matters. If you charge overnight or in the middle of the day, basically avoiding mornings and evenings when more people are using electricity, that puts less stress on the electric grid, and it also takes advantage of more renewable energy sources like solar and wind. We're also launching a new demand response program for electric vehicle drivers in 2024. It includes incentives for people who help mitigate charging impacts on the grid through demand response. It's basically a program that has you agree to limit your charging during times of extreme heat or extreme cold or other high stress times on the electric grid. So there you go. There are some electric vehicle myths, and I'll hand it over to Adam.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Lots of good information there. We'll get on to our second and final poll. That question is, how likely is it that your next car will be an electric vehicle? So maybe you want to buy one as soon as possible, or you're here at this webinar and you are taking some time to research, or maybe you already have an electric vehicle. I've been seeing that in the comments. So go ahead and choose which one fits best for you. And Michael, I'm coming right back at you. Question for you is, how likely is it that your next car will be an EV?
Let's see. It is going to be, I mean, I don't know. Let's see. Well, I want to buy one as soon as possible. My current car still has a lot of life left in it, but as soon as it doesn't, electric vehicle for sure. I love them. I think they're great. I talk about them every day. In the meantime, I'll keep riding my electric bike around, but my next car will definitely be electric once it's time to get one.
Nice. Did you have one that you're looking at right now, or something that you?
Oh, if I had to get one right now, the Hyundai Ioniq 5 is probably where I'd go. I think it looks very cool. I like the range. I like the price. So that's where I would head.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, we have closed that poll. It looks like, oh, these are close. First at 25% was maybe in the next 3 to 5 years. And coming in at 24% was taking your time researching. I know for my wife and I, it took us over a year to figure out what electric vehicle we wanted, what the range was, what the price was ideally, and then to actually find the one that we had. So really appreciate you guys participating in that poll. Now we will get into my personal favorite section of this webinar, and that is, let's chat with an EV owner. So Scott, first of all, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here. Scott bought his first all-electric car 4 months ago, so he's relatively new to owning an electric vehicle. It is a 2023 Nissan Leaf, and he loves going right past the gas station that he used to stop at. Also, EVs like the Leaf are very fun to drive. So let's get into some questions for Scott. First question for you. Why did you first explore buying an electric vehicle?
Well, I've been interested in one for a while. I was on the list for a Tesla Model 3 when they were first announced, and waited 14 months for one. And in the end, I didn't buy it, but it was definitely something I was interested in. We got in a car accident over the summer, which totaled our 2020 car. And as we were researching replacing it, we found that the electric car, when you take into account everything, was the least expensive thing we could buy to replace the Honda Civic that we had. So it ended up being our least expensive option, which was what initiated the reason for doing it, although I'd been wanting one for a while. My wife was less enthusiastic about it initially, so it took us a little time to get there.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad that you guys are okay after that accident. That can be scary. Well, next question is, what made you choose the Nissan Leaf over other electric vehicles that were available?
Well, you know, we drove the Ioniq 5. We've been in the Teslas. We checked pretty much everything. And really what it came right down to, it was we had a monthly payment that was, on the other car, which was not paid off and wasn't going to be for quite some time. And we kind of wanted to keep it the same. And so the Leaf really hit the dollar figure for us as far as we leased it. But the monthly payment on lease was similar to what we had on the previous car. And we were saving about $150 a month in gas. So it actually was less expensive than what we'd started with. And all the other cars were all in the $50,000, $60,000 range, which was just not comfortable at this point. So even though it probably would have broken even, it was nice to save $150 instead of just break even. And it's a great little car. I was actually surprised. I think the biggest thing was we drove Nissan Aria and a bunch of others, and my wife was just uncomfortable with the computerization of the car. And the Leaf, just to her, felt like every other car she'd ever been in. It just happened to be powered by electricity instead of gasoline, but otherwise it was very comfortable. I could just see her relax in it immediately and go, okay, this is what I want. She said, if we buy one of those other cars, it's going to be your car. If it's going to be for me, then the Leaf is what I want. That's why we chose it.
Excellent. Yeah, I remember when we first started test driving the Nissan Leafs, the biggest thing for us was how you put the car into drive, reverse, or park. And that was completely different than having like a manual stick shift or anything like that. But other than that, once you get to driving them around fairly often, it's very easy to get used to.
Modern car, the stick shift is just a big switch anyway. So that makes sense that they're changing them over to just literally be a switch instead of a big shifter thing that doesn't do anything except control the switch. So
yeah. Is there one tip that you'd give somebody that is looking to get their first electric vehicle?
Well, yeah. So what we thought was going to be the thing we were most worried about when looking into electric cars or owning an electric car, and what ended up being the case was quite different. We had to buy a car. We had a couple-week window that we were forced into buying one. So there was a lot of hand wringing and stress over that decision because the insurance on the rental car was running out. And what we were most worried about turned out to be a non-issue at all, which was, the range, which is what the media, everybody wants to talk about how far it goes on a single charge. And we actually drive a lot. It's probably got 6,000 miles on it already in 4.5 months. And range has not ever been an issue. Even on a Leaf, which only gets 225 miles in our version. We charge it every night. We have a level 2 charger in the garage. I probably could have got away with not doing it, honestly, because it charges fast enough overnight to do what we want. Yesterday was the longest trip we've ever taken in it. I went from 100% to 15% and pulled into the garage and charged it up. So it's become a non-issue, really. Like you guys have been saying, most people drive whatever it is, 30, 40 miles a day. If you get a car that gets 200 miles, I mean, I'm not going to road trip in the Leaf, but that wasn't what we bought it for.
Yeah, very good. Well, and just a comparison for everybody on the webinar, we have a 2017 Nissan Leaf, and its maximum mileage is about 110 miles in like perfect condition. So you can see just in those 6 years, it's over doubled the range that you have for it. Okay, well, let's get into some charging questions because I know folks oftentimes have questions about that. Can you give us an example of your charging routine?
Yeah, in the time we've owned it, I've only ever plugged it into a charger that wasn't home twice. Once was at the Nissan, well, 3 times, I guess. Once was at the Nissan dealer because they allow you to do it for free. And we happened to be in the area, so we charged it up because we were doing something else. And one other time I was waiting for pick somebody up in an airport, and they had a charging station nearby. And while I was waiting, I charged it. I didn't need to charge it, but it was there and it was free, so I did it. It's really rare for us to even worry about where they are. Yesterday, when we were driving around and we were getting a little low, we thought, I wonder if we're going to need to charge for the first time here. And we made it home with plenty of charge, so it didn't matter. And that, to me, that's the biggest myth, is that we're worried about all these public charging stations and the infrastructure isn't there yet. And for, I don't know, I would guess 95% of the time, you don't ever plug into one of those. It's just it's been a non-factor for us. Nissan gave us this card to use at EV Go chargers that gives us $100 worth of free charging. I've never used it. I don't need it. So, I mean, that's maybe not true for everybody, but in our job, we drive a lot. I mean, we're photographers, so we're driving around, going to photo shoots every day. And so I think we probably drive more than most people, and I've still not needed to plug it in.
Very good. Okay, and this one is dealing with range anxiety. And so when you're getting down to about 15% yesterday, was there any range anxiety, or have you had it before?
So I haven't had it. It's funny. Again, it's one of those things that the media or anti-EV people really want to talk about. I hear it all the time, and I guess it's kind of a legitimate thing, but it's not. You guys that have Leafs that only go 80 miles, I probably have a little bit more, maybe for that.
Yes.
But in our car, we've driven it to. I live in Olympia. We've driven it to Seattle and Bellevue and back multiple times, and I pull into the driveway with 45% left. And what I know is that if I really needed it, there's plenty of places. PSE has a good one not too far from our house, but they're all over that, I can put the big, I guess I would say this, everybody's talking about how long it takes to charge it up to 80%. The reality is if yesterday we had gotten in a situation where I was a little uncomfortable, I would have pulled into one of these chargers and spent 10 minutes there, gave it in 20% more, and that would have got me home. I don't need to get all the way to 80%. I'm not going to spend an hour sitting at a charging station. I'm going to get it enough to get where I need to go. And so it's really a non-issue. So yesterday I was more aware of the fact that we were down to 15%, but I looked at, the car tells you you've got 50 miles left of available driving and it's 20 miles to home. So I'm like, well, then I'm going to be making it just fine. I don't need to worry about it. And that, I guess if it was 1%, I might have some anxiety, but I don't have anxiety until getting very low.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and speaking from somebody that has the Leaf with about 100-mile range, we've got into a couple situations where we're driving in the middle of winter. It's cold out. The battery might not have as much capacity as it had when it's 70 degrees out, and we've got it to under 10%. And we're definitely, palms are sweaty when you're getting it that low. But another thing, and you've explained this, is there are certain like situations or vehicles with electric vehicles where you buy them for a certain purpose. And we're not going to take ours on a road trip, but when my wife has to travel 40 miles round trip per day, something that gets 100 miles per charge just works out really well for that type of situation.
Yeah, I would say, whenever I travel a lot from my job, and 100% of my trips this year, I have rented an electric car. I've been in Ioniq 5s, Mustang Mach-E's, whatever the rental car company has. And that is a really cool deal if you're only going to rent a car for a few days, because normally you have to pull the car in to a gas station right before you drop it off at the airport and fill it up. With an electric car, you don't. You just drive it in. If it's got 10% left, they don't care. They charge it for you. And it's actually less expensive to rent an electric car than to rent a gas car in most cases now, when you take into account the gas.
Okay, good to know. Maybe I'll look at that next time we go on vacation.
Absolutely should. I spent a week in Denver. I spent a week in Florida, and I never charged it. It had enough charge to do what I wanted to do, and I pulled into the rental car with 20% left on the thing, and I was happy because you don't have to spend the time finding that gas station before you drop the car off and showing them the receipt, all that. You don't have to mess with any of it. It's much simpler.
All right, we'll move on. We got about 2 questions left, and this one might not work as well because your vehicle is so new, but have you had to do any maintenance on your vehicle as of right now?
So for us, no. And I don't expect any anytime soon. But I did have the last rental I had, which I just turned off, the Ioniq 5 had a problem with it. And I had the air conditioner wouldn't work, which caused this inside of the car to steam up and make it hard to see. So I don't know if that was an electric vehicle problem. It was an air conditioning problem. So, that would have been something that would have had to been dealt with, by me if I'd owned that car.
Yep.
But our Leaf has had zero problems.
Okay, good to know. For us, we've had ours about 3 years. We've had to put new tires on it, and that was at about 30,000 miles. We had to replace the 12-volt battery, and we've replaced the windshield wipers. And so that's the only maintenance. We take it into the Nissan dealer once a year, and that checkup takes about 45 minutes for them to check the battery, go through things, tell us what we need to replace, if it's tires or windshield wipers. Okay, final question for you. In your opinion, what's the best part of EV ownership?
Surprisingly comfortable and fun to drive. They're so quiet. They're so smooth. The center of gravity is really low, so it's actually a very fun car to drive. For the Leaf, if you kind of treat it as, it's not a luxury vehicle like many of the EVs are. It's just basically everyday transportation, and it's one of the most comfortable, fun vehicles I've been in. And so I've really enjoyed that. That's been my favorite part. That and just waving at everybody as I drive past the gas station. That's it's like the gas stations, because I have a truck, and it gets 25 miles a gallon, and it costs $85 to fill up. And the amount of times I've had to do that has gone way down. And it's quite an interesting thing now, because it used to be I was just used to doing that. Like, there's no choice. But now that I have a choice, I don't, I really hate the gas station.
Great. Well, hey, Scott, really appreciate your time being here. If you'd hang out just for a little bit longer, we're going to get into the question and answer side of things, and we'll see if we have any questions for you. So we'll move on to the next slide. Before we get into that section, if you wanted to browse models, incentives, and charging stations, you can go to ev.pse.com. If you do have any questions that pop up after this, or we don't get to those questions, go ahead and send them to electricvehicle@pse.com. Or if you do ask a question in the Q&A, we will follow up with you after this webinar. And finally, you can learn more and sign up for the Up and Go Electric newsletter that Michael puts together every month. It gives you up-to-date information on EVs and different incentives that are available. So that's the first place you would hear it from PSE. With that, let's hand it off to Megan, and we'll get into the Q&A section.
Great. Yeah, thanks for all the questions in the Q&A field. We'll go ahead and start going through those. I had a question. I saw a question in there for Scott. So Scott, we have a question about if range wasn't your biggest concern when purchasing an EV, what was your biggest concern?
Well, I should clarify. Maybe I misspoke that.
Okay.
It was our biggest concern, and it turned out to be a non-issue. So we were very worried about it because we drive so much. But in practice, after using it, it's kind of funny. For the first couple of weeks, it was a nightly discussion. Hey, how far did the car go today? How much charge is left in it? We talked about it every day. Like, you would never have that conversation about how much gas is in the tank. So it was a point of discussion, but it very rapidly became a non-issue.
Great. And a question about insurance. Did you have your insurance change when you purchased an EV?
I think we're having some audio.
I think so
But
too.
I can answer this question because we have a number of vehicles. It did not change for the Nissan Leaf any more than it would for our Ford F-150. And so just from our perspective, it didn't change a lot.
Yeah, I can share mine. I actually ended up, we went from one car to two cars when we purchased our EV, and our insurance rate was going to be astronomical. So I shopped around and ended up going with a pay per mile plan because we don't drive a lot. And it's like a world of difference. I actually pay less than what I paid for one car for my two cars. So I encourage people to shop around. Scott, you're back. Oh, we can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
Sorry, it dropped out, and it just cycled back in. So hi, I'm back.
Okay, hi. We just had a question about insurance. Did you notice any difference when you purchased your EV with your auto
It went up a
insurance?
little, but not substantially. I mean, maybe it was less than $20 a month difference, I think. And that's primarily because, you know, we were replacing a $25,000 car with a $38,000 car. So just the cost of replacement, you know, vehicle was more. But I think it would have gone up with if we had bought a $40,000 car this time, it probably would have been the same. I don't think it was more expensive for an electric than it would have been for any other car in that class.
Got it. We have a lot of questions about charging and the difference between like charging, staying between that 20% to 80% charging guideline. How low can you let your charge go? So do you guys want to talk a little bit more about that and what those recommendations are?
I can talk a little bit about
I
it.
can I
if you
can
need
I can
me.
jump in. Go ahead, Scott.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, it's definitely recommended to keep your battery charged between 10 to 80%. You don't want to drain it all the way down. You don't always want to fill it all the way up. Studies are kind of disagree about how bad that actually is for the battery, but it's better safe than sorry. Especially because with most cars and level 2 chargers, you can just preset what you want the max charge to be. You don't have to worry about turning it off yourself or monitoring it. Once it hits whatever you set the max charge to be, it will turn itself off and stop charging. It'll also kick in and keep the charge up if needed when you set it that way. So it's just better for the battery if you don't need that full maximum range. It's the same reason we recommend not using DC fast chargers except when necessary. There's also studies that have shown those can be damaging to the car if used regularly. And then somebody else asked in the Q&A if charging every night was bad for the battery, and that's not one that they recommend against. It's fine to plug in your car every night as long as you have those maximum and minimum set.
Kind of depends on the car too. Like the Nissan Leaf, you can only ever really charge it. It says 100% on the dash, but the way they've designed the car, they engineered it, it only ever gets to 90%. So you can't overcharge it, just the way they've got the thing designed. So we don't worry about that 10 to 80% on the Nissan. Other cars are different, but in particularly that one, they've left some overhead in there. So once the car hits 100%, it shuts off. It's actually not at 100%. And they base the ranges on that 90% number. So it's a little simpler in some cars than others.
Yeah, I'll jump in here too. For our routine, typically it's about 40 miles per day. We charge it almost every day. Most of the time up to 100%. Just leave it plugged in over the night if it's being used the next day. If we do go on vacation, so it's not being used for a week or two, we'll leave it in between that 80 to 20%, just for like long-term storage.
Yeah, we have the same process, Adam. We'll stick on charging for a minute here and talk about public charging. So most charging locations, somebody's sharing that they've had an experience that they either don't work or they're way too slow. And Michael, do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. So it's true that public charging stations can be out of order. Or not as fast as they, should be. My recommendation, and I mentioned it once already, go to plugshare.com. It has a lot of users. They leave ratings for all the charging stations. You can check out which ones are currently out of order, which ones aren't. A lot of users leave recommendations or document what kind of charging times they got with the chargers, how close they match the stated charging times. So definitely check that out before you go to a charging station if you're concerned about that. The infrastructure is improving. PSE is opening its own charging stations. Many other companies are doing the same. So hopefully that's improving. And then the other thing I want to mention, because I saw it mentioned a couple times in the Q&A, is my other favorite charging website, which is a betterrouteplanner.com. And that's where you can plug in your starting destination, your ending destination. It'll what kind of electric vehicle you have. It'll map your route, tell you where you need to stop to charge, tell you how long you'll need to stop to charge to get to your destination. It's a great way of estimating, can I get over Snoqualmie Pass, for example? I see that in the Q&A. Or how long will I have to spend how long will I have to spend charging on this trip? So it's a great tool.
Yeah, there was a question about interstate car trips and what type of planning you would need to do. So that's kind of your best advice is to use that
better route
tool.
planner is great. We had one of our coworkers, Kathleen, drove out to rural Montana in her Volkswagen ID4. It wasn't necessarily as convenient as it would have been in a gas-powered car, but it got her and her family out to rural Montana and back, stopping at Walmarts to charge along the way.
Yeah, I think one of our previous guests talked about how they built in stops around the charging, so they would charge close to somewhere where they wanted to spend time, like either eating or checking out a tourist destination or something like that. Let's see. There's a question here about, will PSE provide a reduced off-peak rate for charging at home?
We currently have a pilot of that going on right now for a limited number of customers. Whether or not that expands to all customers, I can't say yet. First, if you want to be the first to know, sign up for our Up and Go Electric newsletter. It'll be in there if that happens. The other thing I mentioned earlier in the webinar here is that we are launching a rebate program for level 2 chargers next year. If you take advantage of that rebate, you're enrolled in our demand response program, which means you'll receive financial incentives and bill credits for charging and not charge. Well, more to the point, not charging when electrical demand is high. So that is another way to save on your save money based on your charging habits.
Great. Can we talk about cold weather a little bit more? We had a question about like, how cold is cold? How cold are we talking about when we experience effects on our EVs? So, Adam, I know you mentioned that you see that affect your Leaf. Do you want to talk about that? I know you're in Central Washington, so you have a little bit cooler weather than we do here.
So we're in Ellensburg. We definitely see the range go down in that size of a battery pack in the middle of winter. And so when it's in the teens or low 20s, we definitely plan on not being able to use that 100 miles, and it's more like 80. But we're also watching the percentage very closely when it gets that cold. So we had one experience where we were traveling up to Roslyn. It was in the teens. And by the time that we got there, we didn't have enough charge to get back. And so what we did is we just stopped at a level 2 charger, charged up for about 20 minutes or half an hour. It was a little bit cold during that time because we weren't running anything in the vehicle, but we were able to get back no problem. But yeah, we're definitely aware when it's that cold that we will not have as much as we would on a regular 70-degree day.
Right. I saw some questions about the tabs for registration, and I have experience with that myself, that the definitely costs more than on a typical gas-powered vehicle. So, Michael, do you want to talk about why that is and give some more background on that?
I think I can speak for most electric vehicle owners and Puget Sound Energy employees where we're not happy that tabs are more expensive for electric vehicles. The reasoning there is that electric vehicles don't pay gas tax because they don't fill up with gas. Whether or not that's good reasoning or not, I'll leave it up to everybody to decide. I will say that even when you factor in that a couple $100 extra on tabs, the thousands is savings of not filling up with gas, and the maintenance savings more than surpass that. So it may be a higher upfront cost to start the year, but you'll see those savings throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah. Great. And I think this is another one for you, Michael. Sorry to keep putting you on the spot, but can you talk a little bit more about old batteries and recycling and kind of what happens? I know we had a question about after 10 years, like how long do the batteries last? And they do last longer than 10 years. It's just that you might see that range go down, right? So,
Right.
can you talk more about the recycling?
Sure. I mentioned a lot of it earlier. There are a lot of startups partnering with vehicle manufacturers to increase their battery recycling. The Inflation Reduction Act highly incentivizes companies to include recycled battery materials into their new electric vehicle batteries. And then in terms of like the life of a battery, I mean, even once they're removed, I mentioned there's tons of use for them. Tesla has created, stacks of used EV batteries that can power lots of stuff or used for storage. And then, I mean, you and Adam have used Leafs. You can tell that even after years, the battery, its capacity degrades. It doesn't degrade a ton. You still have range. And with ranges increasing with electric vehicles, even if you do lose that 10 to 20 to even 30% of the battery capacity after 10 to 15 years, you still have a decent amount of range depending on your daily driving needs. As far as the cost to replace it, it depends on the model. It can be very expensive to replace an EV battery. So again, the hope is that you won't actually have to do it. Or if you do, it will be while it's still under warranty.
Yeah, the biggest tip I would give people looking at getting a used electric vehicle is just do your research. There's a bunch of forums specifically for us. We went out to the Nissan Leaf forums, and my wife did a ton of research on what's the capacity that we want. They have something called a Leaf Spy. So you plug it into your computer and it'll tell you how many times it's been fast charged, if your battery's been degraded at all. And so we were able to use that while looking at those used Nissan Leafs to make sure that we got the one that had the best battery capacity. And so just do your research, know what the problems are, if there's been any recalls or anything like that. And you'll also be able to tell kind of the range that you're looking for and the price that you're looking for as well.
Right. Scott, you may have mentioned this, but can you discuss, did you buy or lease your EV?
I leased it.
You leased it, okay.
Yeah,
Can
go ahead.
we have a question about which is better, buying or leasing, because it's newer technology and changing so fast. If you could address that.
Sure. Leasing is it's more akin to renting a car in a way. It costs less upfront, and if you only plan on keeping it for a few years, which in our case that's what our plan was. The Leaf was get us from A to B. It gave us the lowest payment that we needed to match what we were doing, and very little down. And in a couple of years when it runs out, you have some options. You can trade it in, you can buy it out, you can drop it off and walk away. And so it gives you some choices that you don't have when you're buying a car and you have a loan. And so for us, it just made the most sense. And we did a very short-term lease, 2 years, because there's a new Leaf coming, and we were thinking we would want that thing eventually. And so we went with, because in 25 there's a whole bunch of new electric vehicles coming. So we felt like the Leaf would get us, as a bridge, because we had to make this decision so quickly. If the lease worked out, but almost immediately after driving it for about a month, my wife was like, "God, I wish we'd gotten a longer term lease because I really like this car and I want to keep it."
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny, which we could do. At the end of the lease, you can buy it if you want.
Yeah. That's an ongoing conversation in our house. We argue about who gets to drive the EV. The last question here is about whether all the charging stations are compatible with all EVs. Michael, do you want to answer that one?
They are not. So different EV models right now have different charging connectors. That's slowly changing a lot. Basically, the news is and the sound is that all other manufacturers will be adopting the Tesla charging model in the near future. So that might not be an issue. In the meantime, pretty much any public charging station you encounter, if it's not a Tesla specific one, you can charge any electric vehicle at. You can confirm it has your port type using PlugShare or other similar sources. If you're charging at home with a level 2 charger, it should be fine to just buy one for your model. And then otherwise, if you're Tesla, you can use Tesla charging stations. You can also buy an adapter that'll let you use other public charging stations. But like I said, this should probably hopefully only be an issue for another couple of years as everyone slowly consolidates into one charging type.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for your questions today. If we didn't get to them, as a reminder, we will follow up through email. Check your email in the coming days for event resources and the recording. And then for attending today, you've been entered to win this $150 gift card, and we will notify the winners today. And there will be a survey as soon as you close out of the event, and we would love to get your feedback and hear from you. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. And once again, we appreciate you all for joining us, especially Scott. Thank you for your time today and sharing your experience, and hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.